Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Analytics Instrumentation sync on the 27th of August, 2024. For a change, we don't have any kind of OKR check-in or milestone presentation or anything like that this time around. I also don't think we have anything particularly noteworthy to show as part of our show and tell. If not, feel free to kind of add something in there if you have something. So I wanted to use this opportunity to kind of dive into a few discussion topics and just discuss with the people that are here, to gather some opinions, because maybe in some cases it can be faster than just waiting for everyone to respond in GitLab. So the first one is using our endpoint for data tracking. I was just wondering about everyone's opinion on this, or if you see any blockers on this, because so far our tooling always extended towards having method calls, right? What we show in our quick start and so on, it's always kind of some kind of .track event method call, be that on the front end, be that on the back end. It's some kind of call. What that led to in some cases is, for example, if we have external systems that are still part of the GitLab instance, but for example, the Kubernetes agent. So that's a system that you can spin up as part of a GitLab instance if you're working with Kubernetes. Or there was another one. I think, for example, the container registry. That's also like if you have a container registry running as part of your GitLab instance, it's actually a separate service that spins up together with the GitLab instance, but it sits separately. And there's still a need to gather instrumentation data from those. So what those teams did normally was they created their own endpoint, and that endpoint then started tracking some kind of event for, because our internal events is quite new still. Most of them they then integrated with Redis HLL and or other kinds of tracking. So they came up with their own endpoints because we only offered these method calls. That was the only way that we offered them to kind of interact with our tooling. At the same time, for a long time, we already have a /track event endpoint, but only we knew about it. So we're using it internally for everyone who doesn't know, specifically, mainly for tracking events from the front end within the Redis HLL counters. So right now, if the front end tracks an event, it sends off one event to Snowplow, and then it also calls this track event endpoint so that the Redis HLL counters, they can track something. And now when we worked with different teams, for example, when we converted the metrics for the deploy group, which uses the Kubernetes agent and so on, it became really apparent that they created like their own endpoints and frameworks around those endpoints to track those things. And that made me wonder again, do we have any reason, or what is everyone's opinion on just making this track event endpoint or a similar endpoint part of our official API? So that in addition to telling people how you can track something via the front end or the back end, we can tell them that you also have this REST API endpoint that you can use if you call from outside the main front end or back end of the GitLab instance.
I am in favor of making it official, especially since we already discussed it with some teams, like the Kubernetes connector one. Yeah, the only thing I would think about is the authorization, because right now we do have it on this endpoint. And we would need to wonder whether we want to make sure that the traffic is only internal, or if we want to remove the authorization overall. Yeah. But in general, I'm in favor of making it an official way of tracking. basically we kind of already do it for front end.
I'm also in favor of making it public. I think the biggest change for us will be that we have to kind of maintain as and version it as a endpoint. Right now, it's kind of just, yeah, as long as the front end, like the front end and the back end is kind of deployed same time, we don't have to worry so much about yeah, kind of old versions hitting this endpoint as we will now. Yeah, I mean I think that's the only advantage of kind of the current situation where some groups create their own APIs, create their own endpoints, and then use the Ruby methods that we provide. Is that then every time we refactor something, it doesn't change the public API. But I'm also in favor of kind of making it the official way of sending data.
Yeah, I guess after hearing from Jonas and me, I think yeah, it makes sense to make it official. Well, unless I would also ask, is there like a reason why we might not want to? Maybe we can go for that.
I think we'll see more and more services independent of the Rails app. So we might as well, yeah, make it ready now, so we don't have to kind of go back and ask everybody to migrate or support like 15 different endpoints that does almost the same thing in slightly different ways.
One, not a problem, but or more of a thing to keep in mind, I think, is when we communicate this to teams, is to make clear that this is still an endpoint that they should only use from within the realm of a GitLab instance, kind of. I don't know if that makes sense. So there's the risk that I see is that, for example, a team like the Switchboard team would consider this as an official API, and or that there might be risk that even something like Switchboard would start connecting to this to send events. If we're not careful, if we don't talk to people or kind of make it clear that the API would still be specific or should only be used with systems that run within the realm of one instance, right? So for example, Switchboard sits outside of the instance, it connects to multiple instances. Same with customers.gitlab.com or AI Gateway or something. And that's a complete difference to something like a, what's it called? Yeah, the Kubernetes agent or the container registry, which is a system that's specific to the instance. It cannot run on its own, really. It's like it doesn't provide value really on its own. It's like it's integral part. It's just more of a service that's part of the could be considered part of the overall instance, like the Rails monolith. So I think that's something that we just have to keep in mind. As for like authorization on the endpoint, I'm wondering, so I know that we right now have some authorization, and the teams have already been kind of like the teams where we informally started with them to integrate with this endpoint, for example, Optimize and so on. They already asked about kind of, okay, how do we integrate, for example, with a personal access token or something like that. I know maybe that's a separate discussion to have then, but I'm really wondering if this is actually needed. Like, or if we could just open up the endpoint completely, right? Because Snowplow is also open completely. Anybody could, in theory, send events there if they completely imitate a valid event. They could theoretically impact our tracking, but that so far we've always ran under the assumption that that's just too much effort for somebody, like with too little gain to actually kind of go through the effort of trying to disrupt our tracking.
Yeah, I do wonder if there are some dangers to making it public. It is true that now we already have Snowplow open publicly, so it seems to be working so far. Which, since it's the case, I think it should be okay to just make it public. Yeah, something that we could do is maybe do a research into how our companies do it, because I'm wondering how do other big companies, like, I don't know, say Facebook, track these kind of things. But it feels like there may be some caveat that we just don't see now. But
I agree. I think we should do some research. Maybe ask some internal teams if
yeah,
they
we
have
could ask.
recommendations. Yeah. I think one thing that might be useful, currently it's pretty easy to kind of detect how, like in the code, to detect how who's calling internal events and kind of who's producing data, and if any of these kind of custom endpoints are being used. But if we create an open endpoint, that's kind of over. Then we just have this pipe that people can send data through. I wonder if we should add like an app name or some identifier to the payload, so we can kind of to go talk to people, so we actually know who's using.
Spontaneously, I'm actually wondering if we should use could use the category for that. Because normally the category right now is kind of this location within the instance, like within the code that we have. So for example, the Ruby class and so on. So in theory, all of these events that come in through that endpoint would have the same category associated with it.
Well, it depends on if that service also wants to use the category for location
within the
things.
service.
Like if the package registry is big enough that and send enough different events that they also use it, want to use it, then that's. But I mean, it doesn't have to be in the Snowplow payload or the event.
Could just be in the event definition, you mean?
I mean, it could be in the payload that is sent to the REST API. It doesn't like it. We don't necessarily need to pass it on. It could just be for log information.
But it would be beneficial to pass it on, right?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, it's probably the easiest way to kind of find the data, or query the data.
Maybe we should, like, if we go this way, maybe we should make category obligatory in our SDK to make sure that, like, every other service that uses it.
Category is already obligatory just from Snowplow. Like you always need to provide a category. Like we can see.
Yeah, but now by default it will be the internal events category, right? In case some other service ping the track event endpoint.
Likely, if it's not implemented. I'm not sure if how the actual .track event call is implemented, but if it's not implemented,
that's how it will work now. As
yeah.
Maybe we could make it obligatory right on the endpoint. But I'm not sure if all front-end events come through with category.
I think they do, or at least there's a default set as well. There's this, it normally it uses some kind of data point on the front end, like like a body.dataset.page or something identifier. I'm not sure if there's like an instance where this theoretically could be unidentified, like, or but I'm not sure.
Yeah, maybe it would be a good way of identifying all the events from different services if we could just make it so that category is mandatory and we say that we expect to have the domain or the service in the category.
What kind of data does the category track? I mean, is it limited? What kind of data do we expect from the category?
It's just a string, and usually it's kind of the location where the event was triggered. So the class, including the modules, for example, of when the event was triggered. Is this also the time to talk about if we should start sending snowplow events from this endpoint instead of having the client send them themselves? Because that will, like, if we don't do that, any client will have to call both this endpoint and also construct snowplow events.
No,
and kind of live up to like the same format and all this. And so it seems like it would be a better architectural decision to have an endpoint with some kind of mandatory optional fields that lets you create an event and not worry about what goes to snowplow and what goes to Redis, and like basically an internal events API version of that.
I have this as part of the issue I linked above, that
Okay.
this should, so the proposal and the issue would be to make it default send things onto snowplow and then configure it in the front end to, for now at least, like to make it configurable so that the front end can say, okay, please, for me, don't send these things to snowplow because I'm already sending them on my own. Because it seems like a separate investigation that we need to do. I think, especially when we also think about potentially sending events from self-managed instances and so on, that ideally we move towards maybe sending those events through the endpoint as well from the front end. So rather than sending anything, like sending events directly from the front end to snowplow collector, we just pass them through the instance as well. But I think there's two considerations there. One is just, I think that I would at least need some kind of investigation into the amount of events being sent, and whether that could be problematic from a performance point of view, or whether we would need to do some optimizations on the endpoint to make sure that this doesn't create any problems. That would be one thing, and the other thing is, what I'm not sure of yet, is whether the data team right now uses the additional information that is theoretically present on events from the front end. So right now, because if you use the snowplow SDK directly, and that's really specific to a web front end, I think that you get the advantage of things like the page, the user agent, and a bunch of things being tracked automatically. Right? There's a bunch of additional information that gets tracked with every event in the front end about the client that is causing the event to be tracked. So that just means I think we cannot just kind of completely switch towards sending those events just through that endpoint yet. But I think we definitely should do it for everything else other than the front end. I don't think the container registry or the Kubernetes agent or any of these services should need to implement a connection to Snowplow, right? Like, we shouldn't have within that realm of the instance and all the kind of satellite services that run around the instance. I think there should ideally be only one connection to Snowplow necessary, like one place where you configure how things flow to Snowplow, and everything else just connects there.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's also something we can expand if we kind of start out with that, and then we find out what's like that some of those standard Snowplow values are missing, for example, from, I don't even know, like, does the package registry, does that have a front end?
I don't think that any of these services has a separate front end from the instance. These are just backend services.
Okay, so maybe okay. So then it might not even be a problem there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cool. Right. Seems we're in agreement. Thanks a lot for talking this through with everyone. It's just good if we have like some agreement there and everyone's aware of the changes we're intending to make. One more discussion point. So we know how the pairing, or that we had some ups and downs with pairing last quarter. And now we have an OKR to get lighthouse metrics and leading indicators for lighthouse metrics instrumented. And after looking through these lighthouse metrics and leading indicators, there were a few of them that were really easy to instrument, and just the teams didn't make time to do that. Like in one case, in the CI case, it was actually kind of really already written down very clearly. Okay, we need these kinds of events. We need to extend this, or we need to extend a specific event, and then we can create all those metrics. And yeah, the team just had trouble kind of prioritizing this. So to get these things over the line, we started actually doing some of the instrumentation. So I guess we went one step further than we did last quarter, where we really stopped at kind of talking to the teams and left it to them to kind of do the initial instrumentation. So in this case, for example, I did some of the instrumentation and then send it over to them for review. We have a bunch more of these kinds of metrics now with compliance, where Mana is doing some of the instrumentation. And what that made me actually realize, because for example, when I did the instrumentation, I discovered some, like it was kind of very easy to do, apart from the testing. And I discovered some issues with like the documentation we had around testing. It was testing additional properties, kind of, it was like there were different options within mentioned within our documentation versus the CLI. So it kind of was confusing. What that reminded me of, and that's what I also wanted to get some input from everyone, is that it actually felt like it might be beneficial to continue having at least one or multiple instrumentations per milestone. So not a lot, but like even without this OKR, maybe aim for doing like 1 or 2 or 3 instrumentations per milestone, just to continue dogfooding our system. Because what I feel like we kind of, by focusing so much on getting other teams to do things, we didn't do really a lot of instrumentation ourselves. We only did migrations. And so we didn't really kind of experience how it is ourselves to instrument some of these things. At least that was my feeling there. And I just want to get everyone's input, because I think we have a lot of back and forth around kind of how much instrumentation should we do versus how much should the teams do themselves.
think it's a great idea. Maybe we could even kind of place them strategically so we can use them for the next, like for prioritizing the next milestone. So if we have those instrumentations done by, I don't know, with a month left of the milestone or 3 weeks or something, then we can add whatever comes up to the, it doesn't have to be the next milestone. Well, yeah, I guess, I mean, just so we can kind of prioritize it. I mean, some of the, like some changes will probably be things we can just fix right away, minor things, but if there are bigger things, it might be good to, yeah.
Yeah, I agree as well. Dog feeding on tools, I think that's very beneficial because then, like you mentioned, you were able to find out some things that were a bit confusing. So yeah, I think it's very beneficial that we also do some of this instrumentation, and it could also help with the pairing issues that we experienced the last milestone. I mean, if the teams know, like, this thing can also be handled, then, I mean, they would be easily available for just reviewing or just general questions. So yeah, I think we could also focus some time on instrumenting ourselves.
Just to maybe my comment led to some confusion, and that was because for some reason I thought we were talking about doing one per quarter. That's why my weeks numbers were off. I don't know if doing one per milestone is a little. You mean one each per milestone, right? Or
yeah.
Or what was the idea?
When you say one each, you mean one person
per
like
team member? Yeah, yeah.
No. That would be
okay.
like one for the whole team.
All right. Okay. Okay. I think that's great. I think then we might even, I don't know, want to do two and kind of rotate them or something like that. So each of us get a little kind of go through this exercise once in a while. I think maybe once per month might be a little much right now. Like one each. If we each do one thing. Maybe we pair. We pick 2 people to do it and pair just on one thing and kind of very thoroughly go through, like simulate going through the documentation and like kind of, I don't know, that could also be. I mean, I guess that's what we want to do, right? We want to do it as somebody who didn't do it recently, right? To kind of test the whole documentation and tools and
yeah, so for example, for everyone to at least every second or third milestone to go through the experience of instrumenting a new event and metrics, I think would be good to just kind of get that experience and how it feels like for everyone else to do these things.
Yeah, I also think it's a good idea, and I also think it would be important to rotate to make sure that everyone gets to do it once in a while, because we would probably have different improvement propositions from different people.
Yeah, that's a good point. And how could we, like, how would we select what to instrument? Because I think one of the challenging part from the pairing thing was like, it would be like, oh, easy. And the other one was like, oh my God, I didn't even know this domain existed within GitLab. And now I need to like spend a lot of time just to try to understand what is even going on over here.
I think that's the big challenge, also kind of communicating it in a way that it's clear that we're not going to do all the instrumentation for other teams, right? But at the same time, we still want to do valid and good instrumentation. We don't just want to like pick some random thing and do it just for the sake of having another event or metric there. It should be something that actually provides value. I mean, right now we have these lighthouse metrics and so on. So there's a good list of things we can look at and pick from. So it feels like we don't necessarily have that problem right now. I can think of a solution in the meantime, because I'm also not.
That's fine. Let's not worry about it then.
Yeah, because I'm actually, so if anybody has some ideas, also in the next days, weeks to come, on how we can best do that, would be interesting. One thing that spontaneously comes to my mind is talking to customer success, actually. Is because they normally, like my understanding is, and that's one of the things that's behind these lighthouse metrics, is that customer success has a hard time getting instrumentation prioritized that they want to happen, right? So it feels to me like ideally we do the instrumentation, we do like, for the ones that we do, those are things that customer success needs, and they oftentimes have problems getting prioritized with the product teams, and not something that product teams want themselves. Like, because they if the product manager wants an instrumentation, they should be able to get that prioritized within their team. Ideally, we can pick off things that are not as high in the priority for the product managers and the product teams themselves, but provide value to customer success. So that would be one idea to kind of, I know, I mean, Miha, you might remember it, like we had these lists of events that we had to migrate to Snowplow back in the day, that were kind of prioritized by customer success, like in a list of prioritization, which ones are the most important to them. I'm pretty sure that if we ask them, that they have a bunch of these kinds of lists lying around. It's like, okay, we need insights in this domain or on that side and so on. So that could be a way to not only gain the experience that we want, but also alleviate an actual pain point that exists within the company.
Yeah, sounds like a cool idea.
All right. Do we have anything else we should talk about today? Right. If not, we can stop the official part of this meeting.